Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. I know that you're here because there's some special interest, either personally or family members or neighbors or whoever. So thank you for being here tonight. And I hope this will be a very helpful session for you. It's as you get older, different things start happening to you. It's just one of those things. Nearly everybody in here can vow to that. Different things start happening. I go into a room and forget what you went in there for. I mean, where's my keys and all that kind of things. I heard about a guy. He thought his wife was losing her hearing, and so he said, "I'm going to test to be sure." And so he got about 30 feet behind her and says, "Can you hear me now?" She didn't say anything. Slipped about 10 more feet. "Can you hear me now?" Nothing. Slipped up. "Can you hear me now?" Nothing. Fourth time he got right. "Can you hear me now?" She turned around and said, "I've told you yes 3 times. So, different things affect us in different ways and come at it in different ways. I see some people I've had the joy of pastoring in the past and pastors I've met. And so I feel like kind of homecoming to be here tonight with you all. So tonight, as I share with you, I'm not going to share all the story about my journey with Jeanette, who had Alzheimer's. I was her caregiver for 7 years. But I'll share some things along the way. But I hope I'm going to give you some practical things. I'm not an expert. I'm not a technical guy that's going to go a lot of deep things technically. I'm just going to talk experientially because that's where most of us will be, experientially. So I think that, like Glenn said, it's going to be recorded. But I think if you're making notes, I think I'll go in such a way that you can make notes with it as you go. And what I'll do is at the end of this, if you've got some questions that I don't cover while I'm talking, just keep them in your mind, and then we'll say, okay, because your question may be something everybody else may be thinking about also. The disease of mental loss, memory loss is a really tremendous big thing. Of course, I'm so interested in the subject, I clip out things along the way. This is one from the AARP, the emotional toll of being a caregiver. That was the big article. I clipped that out. This was in the Wall Street Journal. Do people want to live longer with Alzheimer's disease? This is one, dementia risk to double by 2060. So what we're looking at is something that's very prevalent and affects most of us in some way or another. All of you here, either personally, family, neighbor, spouse, child, parent, have experienced. Somebody in the church. Everybody in here knows somebody that's dealing with it in some way or another. Some years ago, I started making a prayer list to pray for people who have dementia or memory loss. So here's my card. You can't see all the names I had on it, but I started writing them down. And so I wrote those names down. And when I wrote them down, I found out when I started, I had the first list, I had 35 on it. And then 29 had died. I now updated that list recently, and I've got 11 had died. Now I've got 29 that I pray for who've died. And I've still got a total, counting those who now I've added to the list, I've got 65 people that have either died or on this list I've prayed for. Everybody on this list, these people that I'm praying for, if there's only 40 of them that are still living, all of them I know personally except Joe Biden. When he was running for president the first time, I knew he had dementia 4 years ago. I could watch the way he was walking and the way he was talking because I'd observed it up close. I didn't agree with him politically. You may have. I'm not going to get into that. But I know what a terrible thing his family's going through with. And so I pray for Joe Biden and for the family. They're looking after him. But that just gives me an idea. Every week I pray for these people and their caregivers because I've been on that journey myself. So let me have a word of prayer and then we'll just jump in, okay? Father, thank you for your presence, and thank you that you are the greatest caregiver in the universe. And when we come to these challenges in our own journey with people we love, our neighbors, our friends, people at church who walk down this road of this terrible disease, our hearts go out and we want to help every way that we can. We can't always take away the disease, but at least we can deal with it the best we know how. So I pray, Father, that in this session tonight, that you'll bless those who are dealing with this in any way with persons they know and love, those who will be watching it later, and people that we may pick up on later that are just now beginning to show signs of it, and how we can help those around them to get some assistance so they don't have to walk this journey alone. So let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer, and you get great glory alone in your church through your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, now and forever. In Jesus' name, amen. So if I were outlining this, the first, number one, would be recognition, recognizing the disease. In my own experience with Jeanette, the first thing that happened, we found a pair of socks in the dishwasher. And I said, honey, what in the world are you putting socks in the dish? She said, I didn't do that. I said, well, they just, a little elf did it, I guess. I didn't think anything. Maybe she's in a hurry and just threw them in there, you know. But that's, looking back on a lot of this, I look back on because I didn't realize as we were starting down that journey that she may be going through that. So, but when I was reflecting on it, that was one of the things. Then we'd be going somewhere to have dinner or with some friends at church, and on the way she said, now what are those people's names? These are people we've known for 30 years. And we'd drive a while. She said, now tell me who we're having dinner with again. And I said, well, I just told her a few minutes ago. Maybe 2 or 3 times she would ask the names of these people. So that began to, she had difficulty. She did the bookkeeping in our house, the finances. And she was really good. She had a brilliant mind, and she was great bookkeeping. And then I noticed she began to have to do checks over. I see her going through a number. She'd strike them out, or she'd write a check and not get it right. And I noticed keeping numbers up would begin to be a difficulty for her. So I just sensed something was wrong. I said, well, maybe it's just me, you know. So I said, I'm going to call our daughter Betsy, who lives in Orlando. And if you watch First Baptist, her husband's Danny DeArmas, who preaches some on TV, wonderful son-in-law. And so I said, I'm going to call Betsy and see if she's noticed anything when she's with her mother. And so about the time I got ready to call, she calls me. So within like a click of a phone, same time. And I said, Betsy. She said, yeah, Daddy. I said, hey, can you meet me for lunch or breakfast? And something don't seem right about your mother. She said, Dad, that's why I was getting ready to call you. So right that same instant nearly, the Holy Spirit just put us together on the phone. And so we met and began to go over things. So I called our internist, our doctor who'd been with us for several years, and we went to our physical. And so he always would do a little test, you know, if you can have 3 items, if you can remember those 3 items, and draw a clock and say what time it is and that kind of thing. And so she had trouble on one of those. And so he got through and he said, I'm going to send you, I think you need to go to a neurologist. It could be thyroid or something like that, but I'm going to go, I recommend you go to a neurologist. And then he turned to me and he said something I'll never forget, and I wrote it in the book. He said, if it's not thyroid or medicine, he said, you may be in for a wild ride. And that just stuck in my mind, a wild ride. Well, went to the neurologist. Long story short, they did a bunch of tests. Supposed to be the best neurologist in Florida. Did a bunch of tests. And so after a while, he put her on some medicine. I'll talk about some of the meds we took in a few minutes. A year or two ago, there were 580,000 people diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia in Florida. In 2020, 26% of the caregivers in America were attending to someone with Alzheimer's. That was up from 22% in 2015. So that number is rising. It's as I showed in the headlines there, the cost of looking after a patient and to the caregiver is pretty strong. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So I decided to write this book, which I have available with me, called What Now? It's a book of help and hope for caregivers, family, and friends. And I wrote the book not intending to, but Deb Terry, who co-wrote with me, her dad had Alzheimer's. She was on my staff at First Baptist, and she was his caregiver for 3 years. When he got it, he was a very gentle man. He got wild. He would threaten people, come to give him medicine. They had him in 16 different care units. And when you go to a place like that and you are physical, you try to choke the nurse or whatever, they'll throw you out. So they'll keep going. The last one that they were getting ready to take him to, there's a place in Chattanooga, she said, that they put him in a room naked and padded walls and just basically leave him there to die. So anyway, she'd gone through this. She knew that I had gone with Jeanette through this, and she sent me an email. She said, Brother Jim, why don't you write a book about this? And she said, people need to know. And I said, well, I hadn't thought about that. She said, I've thought about it. I've made notes about it with my dad, and we need to try to help people as we're both caregivers. So I said, okay, because I had a source. My source was, I kept a diary ever since 1960s, a daily diary. Just, what's happening to the family, in the country, in the world, in my life, spiritual, etc. When Jeanette was diagnosed, I started saving place about that much space on each page, and I just put Jeanette, and I wrote what was happening that day. Medicine, how she was responding, that kind of thing. It was just a. So when we got ready to put this together, I had 7 years, 365 days a year notes to go through to kind of help as I put this together. This book Deb and I put together of practical things that we started to deal with as this disease moved along. So I think one of the hardest things, and it probably shouldn't have been, but in a way it was when to come to deal with it and be honest enough to say, I believe she's got memory loss, dementia. And how do you deal with her? How do you tell your family? You don't say something prematurely. I mean, I didn't know, because I never had been down that road before. So I didn't know, how do we talk to her about it? Does she know? What I tell my mother, who was still living? What I tell our friends at church? What I say about how do I break the news that my wife has Alzheimer's or dementia? So that was one of the big things that I had to deal with in that journey. So that's just the recognition of the disease. That's one, and I talk about that a little bit in the book. And there's some more places you can get more details about stages. But that's how I began, and we began to see what was happening. The second point I want to bring out was medication. So what do you do? What kind of medications? So she took, in the course of her illness, she took Namenda, Aricept, Exelon, and Razidine. None of them helped her. That's what the doctor recommended. I've got a dear friend who's a surgeon, a doctor, whose wife has it, and he said there's a new thing that's come out, and she's going to be on the trial deal to see if it works it or stop it. They say it'll stop it, and so she'd been on it for a few months, but it hadn't worked. I wish there was a cure. They do not know of any known cure. Sometimes things may help one person. One, I forget it was Namenda, or Aricept. When we put that on her, she got wild. I mean, it didn't help her. It made her worse. So Betsy and I said, we're not going to put Mama through that. If it makes her worse, we're not going to do that. So we took her off of that. I had a good friend who's a doctor, a college friend who's a doctor in another state. And I was with him, and I asked him about, I said, how do you deal with patients when he was an internist. I said, how do you deal with patients when you know they've got trouble with memory loss? And what kind of medicine do you prescribe? And here's the word he gave me. He said, I've had 1,000 patients and more. Only 2 who took the meds had any noticeable positive effects. And for about 6 months. And they were very expensive. So when you're dealing with this, you may have to look at, is it worth it? Does it make them better or worse? Is it you keep it for 2 months longer? Are you prolonging the illness? And so you're having to battle emotionally and everything else about how to deal with it. I tried to get Jeanette. I'd do anything because we'd been married over 50 years, and I'd do anything to help her get well. So I found a doctor in Orlando who was doing trials I'd read about. So we got an appointment, went over, and they examined her and talked to her. And then when we got ready to leave, he pulled me aside and he said, we can't do anything. She can't be a patient. So that's at that point, then we just had to start living with the fact that we were going to lose her in time. But there's medication. Again, you have to decide, and you might get some relief from it. So I'm not telling you what to do, what not to do. I'm just telling you what we experienced with it. And they may have come up with some newer things now that can help delay it or their effects. But that's what happened with me and Jeanette. The third thing I talk about tonight is preparation. Preparation for, ultimately, we're all going to die, but you know that the person you're dealing with is terminal. So you start making some other decisions. So we had to make some decisions, and so some things you have to start getting in line while they still have some cognizance is legal work. Documents their will, DNR, do not resuscitate. Someone I know very much, they had a DNR on their mother, and the nurse didn't do it, and they brought her back around, and she lived several more years just as a zombie. So there comes a time that you want to put a DNR if something happens, because usually something else happens, like Jeanette was heart failure, that'll take them out. But you have to have some, I call the emergency people, they ask for that paper. In Florida, you have to show them something. So you need to get all that in writing. A living will, power of attorney, all of those things you need to start lining up when they can still cooperate and their minds are still solid enough to be of help. Now you got to look about caregiving. If you're going to get somebody to come in to the house and be employed, the earlier you get them, the better. And here's the reason. Because they'll get to know them. Otherwise, if you wait till they're later on in the disease, they don't know who they are. They think it's a bad man walked in the house or a bad woman. Who is this stranger coming in here? Because, again, their capabilities have changed. So if you're going to bring somebody in, bring them in earlier on, maybe just an hour or two a day or whatever. And God blessed us with a wonderful caregiver, but we got her earlier on, and Jeanette really came to love her and not be afraid of her. And then you check local assistance agencies, hospice and YMCA. Sometimes they can come by and they'll take them out, do exercise, or take them to something at the YMCA or the hospice place, or the hospice will come in and let you have time to go away for a while. So we found the hospice people to be very, very good. Sometimes I think hospice is brought in just at near death. That's not true. Hospice can come in earlier and can give you some relief so that you don't carry the full weight of that and give you some space, which you will desperately need. Then if you realize that maybe someday will come, because I prayed, I asked God, I said, Lord, if it's okay, I want to keep her at home as long as I can, as long as I'm physically able to do it. And he answered my prayer. She died at home. But sometimes I was getting to the place where she was heavy, because I know what dead weight means now, because she can't help you. I'd say, lift your foot. Well, she didn't know where her foot was. You have to take them to the potty, try to put them in bed, try to lift them up out of a chair. And God's given me a fairly strong body for my age, but I was getting to the place where my kids were saying, Daddy, you're going to end up in the hospital, so you better do something. So thankfully, I was able to do that until she passed away. But I started looking. I got my daughter, and we started looking at facilities in the Orlando area. So if we had to make that move, we felt comfortable. We asked the questions to the people. We got to meet the people, look through the facilities. What did it smell like there? What kind of food were they serving? When did the doctors come by? What kind of nursing? Who's on duty at a certain time? And I was doing an interim up in Tallahassee, and the lady was in the church there. She was working for the state of Florida, and she was in charge of overseeing all the healthcare facilities dealing with living assistance in Florida. So she told me, she said, here's some questions. And she gave me a list of questions that I have in this book. When you go and sit down with the directors, have that list of questions with you. And that was one of the most helpful tools I had, because I could ask questions intelligently and hopefully get some answers, because I knew if time came, we had to pick a place, I could look back over my notes and see who we talked to and what kind of facility and that kind of thing. So that's very, very important for you. Don't wait to the last minute when you have to do something and it's you're scrambling, so you don't want to wait too long. In the book there's 20 questions that you can ask that I have listed in this book. And some places offer a 2 to 4 week trial where you can bring your loved one into that facility, and for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and you can bring pictures, things that they're familiar with, and put them in the room with them and see how they do and how you do with the experience. So I had a group lined up to go to Israel. And so I talked to Betsy, and I said, what do you think? She said, well, let's give it a try. I said, I'll go over, and Kathy and I'll be checking on her, and we'll check every day, so don't you worry about it. You go, and we'll have a chance to check it out. So we put her in for 2 weeks, and she did fairly well at the facility. We were fairly well pleased with that. Probably if we'd had to go there, we would have taken her there. But the silver lining in that was one of the ladies who was looking after her. We got ready to leave. She came to love my daughter Betsy and Jeanette. It just became friends in a way. She said, now, I'm not going to work here much longer. She said, so if y'all are looking for somebody to come to the house, let me know. She was a CNA. She had been a hairdresser at another time. She was real pleasant. She was a Christian. And so we had her name. And so ultimately, she came to work in our house and stayed with us till Jeanette died. In fact, she was so precious, she flew to Nashville, where I buried Jeanette. She flew up there for the service that I had in Nashville. But that was, we had to get it done, and I'm glad that we did what we did. But that's something to look at when you start down this road. Again, don't wait till it's too late and you can't get it done. Fourth thing, some observations. Here's some observations that you can expect to happen along the way. Number one, family, friends may back away as time goes by, and you may feel lonely. Why? Because they don't understand the disease. It's scary. If you're talking to someone that you've known real well and they're just normal, and all of a sudden you're talking to them and they think you're another name, or they say, who are you? It scares people. And so it's not that they don't love you and care, but they're scared. They don't know how to respond, because if they haven't dealt with it, they don't know. And so rather than deal with it, they just back off. And I'm sad to say this, but a lot of times family, even living in proximity, won't help out. And that breaks my heart when I hear that. Thankfully, my daughter was close, and she and our family there did. But I heard war story after war story where family members just, they wouldn't have anything to do with it, even children. So that's going to happen. At the church, I had a group of ladies, they call themselves Jeanette's Angels. When they realized the diagnosis had come, 8 women gave me a list of their names. I knew all of them. They'd been friends of Jeanette's. They said, we're her angels, so if you need us, you call, and we'll come and give you a day or half a day or whatever, which meant a whole lot to me. So anyway, first thing that meant. Number 2, take pictures and videos of them while they can still answer questions and talk. It'll be a precious memory for you later when they cannot respond. So if a family gathering or sometime at a dinner table or something at church, take some pictures and have some video that'll be priceless to you, because there'll come a time when they're not able to respond in a way that you'd like to show it on video. Number 3, here's some practical things I learned. Don't argue with a person who's going through memory loss. You don't win, and they don't understand. Don't ever say, do you remember? They don't. They don't remember. At first I said, well, honey, I just told you, don't you remember? Oh, yeah, okay. 2 minutes later, did you remember? So I finally learned, don't do it. Don't ever say, do you remember? I learned to, when something came up, to deflect it or redirect it. So it's like sometimes there comes a time sometimes where they have delusions or hallucinations. She'd say, there's 2 men out there getting ready to come in the house and kill us. And I used to say, no, they're not. And I learned, okay, yeah. And I'd go get on my cell phone. Let me call the sheriff. Hey, sheriff, could you? And that calmed her down. But that for that moment, she was scared as just if they were real people coming in. Or she'd go out, start out the door. Where are you going? I'm going to see Mom and Daddy. Well, they've been, first time I think I said, well, they've been in heaven for years. But she didn't know that. So she started out, I said, wait a minute, hon, let me call and see if it's okay if we come by. You know, your mom don't want us dropping in. You know how that is. Oh, okay. And she'd come back in. So I learned over a period of time to redirect, and for them, usually that worked nearly every time. I've learned to deal with sundowners. That's the afternoon usually. At our place, it happened between 2 and 5. She'd be all right maybe in the morning, but in the afternoon, I don't know if her body got tired or mind or whatever, and she would be really hard to handle. She'd ramble around going through the house, or she'd try to redecorate a pot of flowers, and she'd fix it, sit down, and get up and fix it again, and fix it and fix it. We had to start learning to cope with that afternoon thing, and I think the term they use medically and otherwise is sundowners. Another thing that's really amazing is their long-term memory. Long-term memory, she could go back, I could get out her annuals or, from when she was in high school or grammar school, or pictures of the family. And she said, oh, it's Mr. So-and-so. He was my principal in the 6th grade. Or Miss So-and-so, she was my teacher in 3rd grade. Oh, we rode the same school bus. And she was exactly right. But I asked her something 2 minutes ago, and she didn't know. It didn't faze her. But the long-term memory is an amazing thing. She prayed till she became unconscious. So if you've got a loved one that's a Christian, you'll probably find praying, hymns in the Bible are still there. If they've had that background, it's even Alzheimer's don't take it away. It's boom, it's stamped in. And that's why I tell pastors when I'm talking to younger pastors, I say, God, or your families, get your kids to know the songs of the faith, get them to know Scripture, because that's something even Alzheimer's can't take away. I could do like the John 3:16. It's right up to nearly she died. I could say, for God so loved, and she'd say the world, that he gave his only son. She could quote scripture just like that because she'd memorized it years ago. At church, I'd be sitting up there and looking out there, and we sing a hymn. She's singing word for word without a hymn book. The Christmas before she died in January. That December, we were going over to our daughter's house, and I turned on the radio and doing Christmas carols, and she started singing every one, word for word, word for word. It was amazing. That was planted in her mind and in her heart. So do everything that you can to help go back. And it's amazing how they'll go back and talk about it just like I'm talking to you. Another thing, big number four, they will get up for company, etc., and may seem like they're normal. The casual observer will say to you later, well, she's acting just like she always did. And I learned that when they like when we go to church or we'd go out to eat, she would, just like a player or athlete getting ready for a ball game, they just kind of get pumped up. She'd get pumped up and she'd say, well, hello, how you doing? God bless you. And just like she always did as a pastor's wife, you'd talk to her and she'd sit there and smile at people. And you'd think, well, people say later, well, she looked fine. But they don't live with them 24 hours a day. But they get up for that. What happened afterwards, I learned, they'll crash. It's just like they get so worn out knowing that something's happening that they've got to push themselves, and they'll push themselves, and then when it's over, it's like running a mile race and you get to a finish line and so we knew whenever this happened that more than likely she's going to have a bad aftermath, but it was worth it for us to get her out and for, I think, to be socialized and be with people. But we learned that it can be a tough time. And her, like sometimes they seem so normal. Like I take her over to our Betsy's house, and she'd go over. Betsy and her would talk, and they'd have tea and talk and everything, and get back in the car. And she said, "Well, Mom just did great." And we get in the car and drive off. And I said, "You have a good time, hon?" She said, "Yeah, that was a nice girl." Who is that nice girl? She didn't even remember it's her daughter, but when she was there, she was just fine. So you can kind of expect that can happen along the way. Don't get offended. This is the next number. Don't get offended if they don't remember you or call you by a different name. During the course of Jeanette's illness, I was her daddy, I was Bobby, I was Jim, and one time I think she called me by her old boyfriend's name, Wesley. So I never knew who I was. In her eyes, I didn't know who I was going to be at that particular moment. So at first it kind of bothered me. Well, I've been living here 50 years. But she'd say, well, Daddy, and I said, oh, okay, honey, you're a great daughter. And I just kind of go with the flow on that. And then sometimes she'd say, you don't love me. And that hurt me, but I knew it hurt me even though I knew it wasn't true, but she didn't know better. But it still hurts for somebody that you lived with and loved passionately for 50 years to say, you don't love me. Well, honey, I love you. No, you don't love me. So you have to, again, change the subject and go on. But those kind of things happen. They don't mean to, but that's a part of it. Next, number 6. Familiarity and routine is very important. Familiarity and routine is very important. For instance, her hair appointment for a long time was on Friday. She's going to go get her hair fixed. Even when she remembered getting her hair fixed. Now, I know for you ladies, that's a very important thing. My dad used to say about my mother, he said, I hope I don't die on Thursday. That's her hair appointment day. She said, I'm sorry I can't talk to him today. I take him to the hospital. I got to get my hair fixed. But those things kind of stick in their mind like that. So, but that was the familiar thing. That's something she did year after year after year, was get her hair fixed. So that was important to her. So I tried to, and when Arlisa came to help, she had been a hairdresser, and so every week she would, on the time that she was used to do it, she'd fix her hair at the house. And I'd be in the studio somewhere, and she'd get through, and she'd come out, and she'd show me how her hair looked and everything, like she was a model. And she was so proud she had her hair looking good. So familiarity is very important to to our loved ones. The bedtime routine became important for us. So every night I kept the Bible and that book, Jesus Calling. Some of you are familiar with that. I think Sarah Young. So we would read out of that every night, and she would, sometimes I'd ask her to read, and to the very last few weeks, she could read pretty well. Occasionally she'd run into a word that she couldn't say, and I'd help her with it. But then we'd pray, and then I'd tuck her in, just like I did my little girls when they were small, and I'd say 3 things to her every night. I love you, I'm here for you, and I've got your back. I told her that every night at bedtime. And every time, even to the very last, she would repeat that right back after me. I'd say, I love you, and she'd say, I love you. I got your back. She'd say, I got your back. I'm here for you. And she'd say, I'm here for you. But it was a repeatable, familiar thing. And she was able to keep doing that to the very last of her life. Number 7 of the observations, you're the last person that's the closest to them that they'll remember. And that's why they want to see you and be close to you, because you are security. The other world will start leaving them, and they become afraid. But they see and they know you, and so that's why, she'd follow me around the house. I'd go out to the garage, and I'd look around, and she'd be behind me. Or if I was going somewhere and she hadn't seen me, she'd start looking around the house, looking for me. We go to church. Sometimes at church, I'd go down one aisle to shake hands with people, and then she'd be on this aisle. And she'd start looking for me. And Kathy, who was sitting there, she said, Jim, you need to go down that aisle every Sunday, because when you don't come down that aisle, she's looking for you. She wants to see you and touch you. So security, and if you're the closest person to them, they'll really want to be close to you if they possibly can. Somebody put this little quote. I pulled it from something. It says, I don't know who you are, but I know you love me. And that's, I think, the best way to sum that up. Security is very important to them. Number 8, there'll be some humorous moments. And that kind of helps get through sometimes. And if they're funny, they're funny. And even though the person is you're not laughing at them, but you're sometimes laughing with them because they'll come out with stuff, and you just can't help but laugh. I wrote down 2 or 3. I remember Jeanette, she said, I asked her one time, I said, I love you. And she said, I love you. And I asked her the question, why do you love me? And she said, you're good and smart. And I said, well, why do you mean that? She says, you married me. So here she was with Alzheimer's, but boom, boom, she's back like she was 40 years old. One time we were going up to the mountains, and she was about mid-course with the disease. And about halfway up there, going up to Asheville, she said, now you can't spend the night in the house tonight. I said, well, why? She said, we're not married. I said, well, honey, I said, of course. I said, I was dry. I said, here's my ring right there. She said, you can buy one of those anywhere. So I said, what am I going to do? She said, I don't know, but you're not going to sleep in the house. She said, we're not married yet, and about Jesus wouldn't be happy with this. Mom and Daddy wouldn't like that. And when we get married, you can stay with me all the time, but you're going to have to sleep outside or something. You're not going to sleep in the house. So I said, man, what am I going to do? Thankfully, she forgot it 30 minutes later. but I looked at it, it scared me for a while. I said, if she keeps remembering this, I'm going to have trouble tonight. I don't know what I'm going to do. One time we was at dinner at the house, and so we also learned, don't put too much on the plate because they have to make decisions. So you just put maybe 1 or 2, 3 at the most items on a plate at the time, because it's hard for them to get a bunch of stuff on there, confuse them. But anyway, we had a nice little plate for her and sat there, and I said the blessing, and she just kept looking at the food. I said, Jeanette, eat it. She just sat there, and I'm sitting right over there. I said, Jeanette, eat your dinner. Nothing. Jeanette, eat your dinner. She just kept staring straight ahead. I said, Jeanette, this food's been prepared for you. It's getting cold. Eat your dinner. She bowed her head and she said, Dear Lord, help Jim to be nice to me. And I realized I'd kind of raised my voice, and man, she knew my name, and she knew I wasn't being really nice to her. So those are those moments that come along in the journey that you don't forget, and you look back and smile. Number 9, it gets messy sometimes. I heard a man who did a thing at First Baptist for memory care, and he said he had been a surgeon. Then he decided to start helping people with neurological problems. Went back and got another degree. He was really great about this. And he said, I became the rear admiral for my wife, because after she got where she couldn't clean herself up, I had to do all the cleaning. And so there came a time when Jeanette, she didn't know what to do. So I cleaned her up. We'd get her to wash her face or something at the sink, or brush her teeth, or she'd put toothpaste in her hair. You go through a lot of different things like that. So there are times that it's messy, and you just say, okay, I'm going to take care of whatever it is. I'm going to take care of her or him. So just realize that's a reality. You can't make it any nicer than it is. It happens. Number 10, you need to get away some and take a break. If you are the one given most time and care, you got to fix it so you get away. You need to take a break. 40% of caregivers die before the patient does. So the stress, if you can imagine, you've got an 18-month or 2-year-old child in the house, you got to watch them every minute if you've been a parent or grandparent. Unless they're sleeping, you got to watch them. And so it's a stress. Where are they now? Or did they go and turn on the stove? Or did they go try to get out the door? Or are they pulling something out of the door? So there's a stress level. So it's very important. If you're a caregiver or you're helping somebody, you got to arrange to get out and get away some for your own health's sake. There are a lot of good resources available today. In the back of the book, I've got how many? I've got indexed about different places, like for Alzheimer's, in the book where you can get it. And then I've got in here 2 pages of places you can get more help with Alzheimer's. Books to read, papers to get. A lot of them are free, and they're really helpful. So there's so much good information out there. You can do it by video. You can just get an app for it, and they're putting out fresh stuff all the time. But I put a lot of these in here. Marilyn, who helped edit the book, the 2 of us, we worked a long time with Deb to get resources. We got websites, books, songs, videos. Like any of you ever see the Glenn Campbell video? They did a thing. Glenn Campbell, a singer, when he started down with it, they started walking with him with the camera. And it's really a precious thing. And Miss Campbell came to our church and talked after he passed away about that. But we got the videos. There's something called the Alzheimer's Project that you can get. There's 5 movies dealing with memory loss and Alzheimer's. There's something called the Dementia Virtual Experience. They'll come to your place or your church or wherever, and do it. And what they do is, we had them come to First Baptist, and I went to it, my daughter and I, they'll set you in a room and they'll talk to you a few minutes and they'll say, we're going to take you in a room. And so you go into the room and they don't tell you anything. You're in the room. It's kind of semi-dark. And you go into the room and then there's a table there with papers and magazines. There's a rack of clothes over here, a long rack of clothes. There was all kind of sound. You hear a fire engine every once in a while, a siren or blur. And you sit there. So and there's a chair there. So I said, am I supposed to do something? I was sitting there, standing there. Am I supposed to sit down? So, because they hadn't told me to do it, just put me in the room. So after a while, they come get you and go down and sit down. And they say, now you know what somebody with Alzheimer's is going through. That's exactly what they feel, what you felt in there. What do I do? What are these clothes here for? What's this magazine? What are those sounds I'm hearing? So they'll come and do that. And if Glenn makes arrangements for churches to come together and do that, they'll come to you and do one of those. And you can, as caregivers or family, come and see that and experience it. It really gives you an empathy to what the one that you love is going through. The next, number 12, keep them socialized as much as possible. For instance, Sunday before she collapsed with her heart deal, she was at church and we took her to a restaurant to eat. When you go to a restaurant, and some guys they had cards, I tell the wait staff, my wife has dementia. So if you just understand that things may be a little different here. And every place we went, they were so kind. They gave her extra care. They understood what we were doing and that she may say or do something out of the way, but they understood that. So I alerted the wait staff or the manager, whoever, if we're going to a restaurant, this may happen, it may not happen, I just want to let you know what we're dealing with here. Every place is very helpful. My biggest challenge was restrooms, because I couldn't go in the ladies' restroom. So if I didn't have a woman with me, then I'd have to stand there and say, my wife is going inside here, would you kind of keep an eye on her for me? And I explain the situation, let me know. Just I want to make sure she gets in and gets out okay. So that was one of the challenges I faced with the restroom situation. Number 13, financial cost. 3/4 of caregivers spend their own money because you don't get a lot of help from the government or other resources. Now, thankfully, Governor DeSantis, and I don't know if that passed or not, they were trying to put it in the budget so that caregivers dealing with Alzheimer's could get some money or a discount. And I think, I know if Trump, I read some time ago that they were going to try to do it, the budget. I don't know if they're going to do it or not now with everything they're cutting, where they can help you. But otherwise, it's going to fall on you and the family to probably pay for the resources. Now, this is in 2021. The average person, caregiver, I'm not talking about putting in an institution or in a safe house, spent $9,000 out of their pocket. Now, it's probably a lot more than that now, but it's going to start hitting your pocketbook. But when you're a caregiver, the estimated value of caregiving work in 2017 was $470 billion that caregivers gave without any assistance from the government. So it's going to cost you, and then that's why you start looking at these different places or have somebody in the home. So when we brought this wonderful lady in that we met at the safe place, that Jeanette was there for a couple of weeks. She was so kind. I paid her. She worked 35 hours a week, daytime hours, and I paid her, I think, $15 an hour plus expenses, driving to and fro and any food or something like that. I don't know if you can get that now or not. Jeanette died in 2019, so it's probably more than that. But to me, it was worth it because she was at home and I could be with her, and she was getting really good care, and it gave me some time to do some other things. And number 14, and my daughter said it first, she said, this kind of life as a caregiver is your new normal. It's your new normal. Okay, number 5, The big heading would be Destination Celebration. Have some idea of hospice, funeral home, memorial service, obituary, etc. You don't want to do that, but you need to start thinking about that. Where, how much, who, how you're going to do this, checking out the different hospice groups and talk to people about that, who's the best, the funeral home, all of these things, because it's going to happen, and you want to don't wait till the last minute for that. At home, after the service or the memorial service is over, dealing with personal items and clothes and things, mementos, that was a hard thing for me. I think it probably be for anybody. She loved to wear this dress or these shoes she wore. She played golf, and that was her clubs or whatever. That's a very hard thing to do, but you got to do it. But it's not an easy thing to do. There's going to be notifications. You got to get in touch with Social Security, the bank. You got to get death certificates. All of a sudden, you find hospital stuff, things to wrap up. You start getting bombarded nearly of things that you need to do to wrap up things. So get ready for a season of that kind of thing. Someone said, looking back over that, if you knew that she was going to have Alzheimer's, would you have married her? And I said, yes, 1,000 times yes. Yes, that ain't question. One lady said to another lady, said, your father died, I guess you must be relieved. She said, no, I was offended. I missed him. I still do. It wasn't until he died that I realized how important taking care of him had been. And that's a weird thing, but that's kind of what happens. Along the way, there's so many other treasures, and I think I brought this one with me to share with you. I'd been off preaching somewhere, and I came back home, and when I came in, she had written me a note. And it was on my old church letterhead from First Baptist. And she wrote, this was 8/14/20. So that was September the 14th. Then she wrote 20, then she wrote 17. She scratched it out to get it right, 17. 2017. Jim Henry, I love you and will see you on Jim the 16th. I shall never change. I'll always love you, Jeanette. So that's a treasure. I'm going to take anything for that. You couldn't give me all the money in the world for that letter that she wrote. Though she was with Alzheimer's, she could still say, I love you. And I cherish that wonderful life we had together in that letter that she was able to write. And then at the end of the road, and God gave us, and this doesn't happen every time, but God gave us a wonderful experience with Jeanette. I'm going to read part of it from the book. When I walked into the room, I'd been outside, and there were some nurses there. The lead nurse, when I walked in the kitchen, she said she's dying. And I said the words were so chilling, yet so matter of fact. So our constant vigil continued as we lingered by her bedside and watched her breathing become more erratic. When she would open her eyes and talk, she would have the most peaceful look on her face. On Wednesday of that week, she began to mumble. It's amazing, she said. I'm like an eagle. At that point, Betsy, our daughter, and I began to talk about the fact that Jeanette would soon see her parents, Mama and Papa, as well as Daddy Jim, my father, when she crossed over into heaven. She was still smiling when she said, I need to see that lady. We replied, soon you'll see Mimi. That was my nearly 101-year-old mother who was dying at that time, the same time Jeanette was dying. My mother was dying in a Nashville hospital. We believe she was the lady Jeanette said she needed to see. Oh my, she cried excitedly. While holding her hand, Betsy asked Jeanette, "Who's holding your hand?" Fully expecting her to reply, "Betsy," Jeanette surprised us when she said, "Jesus." And then Jeanette said, "That's Mama." Betsy said, "Does she look pretty?" "Yes," she said. "Are they close?" "Oh, very, very close." "Is your mama happy to see you?" Betsy said. "Yes," Jeanette replied. At this point, she rested a little bit and then rallied and said, "I see palm trees," and repeated that again. Betsy asked her if she saw Irish flowers, which is the Tennessee state flower. Jeanette offered no response to that question. However, she went on to further describe what she was seeing. Oh my, they're all in line." "Everyone who loves you?" Betsy asked. "Yes," she replied. A few minutes later, she said, "My goodness, those are other languages." "Can you understand them?" Betsy inquired. "Yes," she smiled and said. Jeanette said, "Oh my," 3 more times for a total of 7 times in our conversation. This was an expression she normally used when something really caught her attention. On Thursday, she slept once some more. She again stated she saw her mother and friends. Our hospice nurse said, "Listen to her. She's sharing her journey with you." I asked the nurse if this was unusual. She said it was not. She had seen it often as people near death. That was why she advised us to pay attention, as Jeanette was acting as a guide and sharing her observations with us. Later that day, I was standing at the foot of her bed, and Jeanette looked at me, gave me the sweetest smile, slightly raised her hand, and waved at me. The next day, Friday, Jeanette kept pointing to her left. Whatever she was seeing was happening on the left side of the room. She was trying hard to point it out to us. Her last words were, "It's so nice." Her physical body shut down on Monday morning at 4 a.m. However, I think her precious spirit went to heaven Friday night. So that was a wonderful experience that I'll always cherish, that God gave us with her and her crossing over to heaven. There's another book that's not in the references I have as a resource called "Keeping Love Alive as Memories Fade" by Gary Chapman. He wrote the book, The 5 Love Languages, which you probably heard about. This is an excellent book. I wish I'd had it. It's fairly new, I think. I've gone through and underlined so much in it. But I wish I'd had that. I think I could have done a better job with Jeanette and helping other people if I'd had this book as a resource. So you can go online, I'm sure, and get this. It's called Keeping Love Alive as Memories Fade. And then this one little... This was by a lady named Brenda, who's in the Alzheimer's unit. Somebody handed this to me, and it's just precious. It's just beautiful. I want to read that to you, and then I'll field your questions. "Do not ask me to remember. Don't try to make me understand. Let me rest and know you're with me. Kiss my cheek and hold my hand. I'm confused beyond your concept. I'm sad and sick and lost. All I know is that I need you to be with me at all cost. Do not lose your patience with me. Do not scold or curse or cry. I can't help the way I'm acting. Can't be different, though I try. Just remember that I need you, that the best of me is gone. Please don't fail to stand beside me. Love me till my life is done." And I think that's a beautiful prayer, probably spoken. The lady had Alzheimer's, but she was able to write that. That was a beautiful point. Okay, I'm ready now to ask you to ask any questions about something I talked about, I didn't talk about. Probably everybody else may be thinking the same thing, so have at it, and we'll go, and I'll try to answer or tell you I don't know. Just hold up your hand and tell me what you want to ask. Well, physically, yeah, I would say she did pretty good physically. Like I say, she went to church. We were able to help her out of the car, get her into the services. She sat there, went through the whole services. She did really good. She went to church every Sunday. For a long time, she went to Sunday school and church. So physically, I think I'd say her motor skills probably lasted longer than her emotional and mental skills. Yep, they did. I think we had to learn like depends and other things to fix her up before we went out. But she liked to go out. She enjoyed it. So we did it till we couldn't take her out anymore. Okay? Yes, sir.
Do you have practical suggestions for the church as it ministers to caregivers and those who...
Practical suggestions to the church. Yes, I do. Our church, I didn't realize at First Baptist Orlando, 2 ladies in the church both lost their dads with Alzheimer's. And they said, Brother Jim, can we start a support group at our church for people with Alzheimer's? Not knowing that I was going to be the beneficiary, I said, oh, I think it'd be a wonderful ministry, kind of like divorce recovery or grief recovery and those kind of things. I thought that would be a great support group. So they started that nearly 20 years ago. And we have set up, because I've done these seminars at different places, Charlotte Sharoff, we set up a page of how you can start a support group in your church. We have materials we can give to you to help you start that support group. You need a leader, somebody that can bring the group together. And then this group that started at the church, they do a Zoom once a month where anybody in the world can Zoom in on it. And they talk about some things that we talked about tonight and a lot of other things. We have people in the group that are starting down the road or in the middle of the road or at the end of the road who have been through it. So they keep coming back, kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous. They keep coming back and sharing. So we can make that available to your church. You can Zoom in on that meeting. And then they have a live meeting once a month where people, during the daytime, where people can come to First Baptist Orlando and the group meets. And they'll sometimes have a speaker that's really good with care and things like that. Or they have Q&A, or people talk about where they are. Did you have this happen to your loved one? How did you handle this? And you got people who are on the journey. So yes, good question. And I've told the guys, and I've done this in other states, I say, if you do this, it'll be one of the greatest outreaches you can have in your church. Not only for your people, but for people in the community they know, other churches, neighbors, parents, may have nothing to do with your church. We say, hey, we have this group that meets regularly and we can help you down this road, because a lot of people don't realize there's help available. And a lot of people are desperate but don't know where to turn. And if we offer that, I'm going to tell you, Brother John, it can be a tremendous outreach. So when we get through here, I'll tell Glenn how to get that link, and you all can go online and start watching. You can just watch it in your home. You can have some people with you and you can Zoom in. They meet for about 2 hours, and it's a tremendous thing. So that group's been meeting for 20 years in Charlotte. She's an expert at it. Not only her father and her brother died with it, and she's been leading this group for 20 years. Every Christmas we have a big party, and all the caregivers and their loved ones that they're taking care of come together. We'll have 50, 60 people there every year, and it's really a special time. But it comes from that care group. So if you or somebody in the church will take hold of this, it's a fantastic outreach. And here's the thing. More and more people are going to need it. It's not diminishing. It's growing. So, like I said, that list I've got right there, I've added in the last month, I've added 6 people that I know in the last month just been diagnosed. It's everywhere. Does that help? Okay, good. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, your prayer life and your quiet time at night or whenever you can get it in is going to be very important to get God's strength. That's the most important thing, because otherwise you can't carry this alone. Don't try to. So that's number one. Number two, as I suggested, you need somebody to come in, hospice or somebody, to come in and help you, to take some of that stress off of you. Because when you're in the middle of it, you can't call a hospital. Hey, come here, I'm having a bad experience. But your spiritual life is going to be very helpful. Learning what's happening in that person's life and knowing they can't help it will help you to deal with it. And one guy put it this way: you've got to learn to get in their world because they'll never get back in yours. That helped me a whole lot because I kept saying, well, she'll get better. And then she started going through one of these things that you may be or somebody you're dealing with going through, and you want to scream. You just have to bite your tongue and say, this will pass. And Lord, help me get through this. And be sure you get some relief. Because if you don't, you'll get worse. And it may be you, may be somebody else. So I'm talking generally. But I'm just saying, if it's you or somebody else, please spend time with God. And I know you're pushed, but at nighttime or early in the morning, whenever you have some quiet, say, Lord, today, take a day at a time, like an alcoholic. You cannot live tomorrow. You just live that day, sometimes that hour, sometimes that minute. And it can be very trying. I'm not going to try to make that light. It can push you to the limits. But it's not because of me, but God gave me a special time, I think. A lot of people were praying for me. I had other people praying and get other people praying for you. And I think it kind of made it I want to put it like an umbrella. And I found myself loving her more, even when she was not her, if that makes sense. So that helped me when she was turning on the TV or rearranging the flowers that she'd done a dozen times already, and those things are just, you don't need to do that. Or when she'd look at you and say, you don't love me, and when it's hurting you, just ask God for grace, and you'll get through it. And remember, it'll come to pass. It'll be a season of maybe a minute, maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but in time it'll pass. And then something else and I'm not being a doctor, but Jeanette had some depression earlier on. She dealt with depression. And so we went to a wonderful doctor. We sent a lot of people at First Baptist to him for he's a psychiatrist. And he gave, when she started out with this sometime later, when we were having trouble with her, especially in the afternoon when she was just really agitated. And so I took her to see him, whom she'd seen for years. And he said, why don't you let me help? Because I deal with the mind all the time. That's my specialty. I said, well, we've been going to this neurologist, supposed to be the best. He says, well, I know Jeanette. He says, let me see if I can help some too. And so he took some of the meds that he'd been giving her for depression and tweaked them. And he gave her a thing that helped her, particularly on sundowners, was Xanax. When she started down, we'd give her half a Xanax, like at 2 o'clock. When she started, I could see her getting agitated. It took about 30 minutes. It kicked in, and then she would level off. And we got through it. So that, for her, that worked. When they get like that and get about to beat you up, you feel like, or wearing you out, that little thing that the doctor gave really made a difference in helping me and helping us who are caregivers to get through those hard times. Because it's not easy. But you don't try to do this by yourself. You got to get somebody to come in and help you some. But there are those times when just you and the person, and it's really hard. So pray and get other people praying. Jesus told us to pray. The Bible all the way through. If it didn't make any difference, why would he say that? It makes a difference. And you'll find a difference. He'll help you through. Okay? Other questions? Observations? Yes, sir. Yeah. Does she have any mental loss too? A lot of times it goes together. I've noticed through the years, Parkinson's and dementia. Sometimes start with Parkinson's and the dementia comes along. Yeah, and I've seen sometimes the other way, but usually Parkinson's first and then dementia. So,
You know, one thing I can do, what I think about is, I say, God, I put it in your hands and you prepare me.
well, the inevitable is going to happen.
Yes.
So, and I didn't know when, like when I said I wrote that, I read to you, when I walked in that day and there were several nurses there, we had brought her, she'd had a spell, we'd taken her to the Dr. Phillips Hospital, and then they sent her back home. And hospice had come in and had a bed for there and oxygen and everything, and I was starting to look after her. And when she said she's dying, I didn't want to accept it because I thought, well, she's eating and I'm looking at her and she's sometimes responding. But I knew the day was coming. And so I think, as I talked to my sister here, you're praying and doing everything you can to get ready to help her exit be as good as it can be. And reading the Bible is going to be very important to you. So that helped me. And in fact, in my book, O.S. Hawkins, he said you need to put a Bible verse in front of each chapter that fits with that chapter. And I did. I found God's word to be very comforting to me. And I said, Lord, I did ask her. I said, let me outlive her. I don't want to die first. I want to be there for her. And he granted my request. So that's a prayer I prayed, and I asked for strength to take care of her. And he gave me that and gave me some help to do it. So it's inevitable, and you don't want it to happen, but sometimes and this is hard to do, but your emotions say one thing, and sometimes realism has to kick in too. And you somehow have to deal with those two aspects, the reality and yet your emotions. So one's saying one thing, and sometimes reality is saying something else. And you have to ask the Holy Spirit to help you to deal with the hurt, the pain, the inevitable. And yet, I've got this I've got to deal with. I've got to be practical here. I've got to do this. I've got to take care of this. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. And you kick in there like you've got to get these things done for her. But go on and make plans, like I said. You need to go on. You don't say, well, I'm giving up on her. No, you're not giving up on her. You're doing what you need to do ahead of time. And you'll feel clearer in mind and thought now than you will when she dies. So get that done up front. Just go down where you're going to the funeral home, your pastor or whoever. Say, here's what I want to do. How much it's going to cost. When it happens, what I do. And I need to call you first because they'll come to the house. I mean, they came to the house. I already had that lined up. And the hospice people were there, and they've got to come, and they got to, officially that they're dead, and you're there with them, and it's hard to say that last breath goes, and they wrap them up and put them in that hearse and take them away. It's one of the hardest moments of your life, but God will see you through it. He'll see you through it. A lot of times in my book, I assign it, Jesus is enough. He'll be enough. Paul said, my grace is sufficient for you. His grace will be sufficient for you. Don't try to store it up for 2 days from now. Just take a day at a time. Start your morning in the bed if you have quiet time before you get out, or get on your knees or go to a room and start your day. Lord, for today, help me for today and get ready for when she goes home. And he will. He promised. My presence shall be with you. Exodus 33:14. He told Moses, and I'll give you rest. Count on it. Any other questions about anything? Okay, I think that's about all I have. So I want to have a closing prayer. They've prepared some wonderful food over here. Pastor, we got lemonade, we got tea, coffee, we've got some cheese and crackers and veggies and some other things, cookies and things over here. So after I dismiss, you go and help yourself. If you like one of the books, I bought 2 books. Glenn, would you bring that other book, Keeping Life in Perspective? This one, I've made these, thank you, Glenn. This one I sell for $12. I'm going to get rich. I don't want to get, I want to help people. So this is $12. And this one I called Keeping Life in Perspective. I wrote this from a series of messages I brought to the church. And I think it's probably as pertinent today as it ever was about dealing with change, family, money, eternity. So some practical things that I preach out of a shepherd's heart to my people. So the two of them together, get two for $20, or separately $12 a piece. And they'll be over here. And so if you want to come get them, you're welcome to it. I'll be glad to sign if you want me to sign one, or if you just want to take them with you, you can take them with you. And if you've got some more questions, I'll be at the table. Feel free to ask me. But take your time here, and thank you all so much. I hope it's been helpful to you. And it's something, maybe some notes, something that you can carry with you, carry home with you, and will be a blessing to you along the way. So I know that you care, or you wouldn't be here tonight. And I know that you're all in a journey, but I promise you, you'll get through it. You'll get through it. There'll be some hard times, but you look back over it and see, sometimes in suffering and sacrifice become some of the greatest times in our walk with God. And so God, grace, will see you in it and through it. And He'll direct you. You pray for guidance and for wisdom and discernment. That's what I say. Lord, give me guidance. Give me your counsel. Give me your discernment. Give me understanding. And He does. And it comes sometimes from outside. Sometimes He'll speak something you read in the Bible, or somebody says to you, or you watch. Sometimes He'll speak to your heart, and you'll know it. So just count on Jesus is enough. God bless you all, each one. And you've been such a patient audience, and great to share with you a common thing we all have in common. We're on a journey. Thank you.